Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzilanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. So as you can see, we are riffing, right, on this phrase that Abraham used, afar vaYera, I am but dust and ashes. Okay? So again, you can see we have a bunch of these. You look at this, and all taken from various different points of view and how we are interpreting Torah. It's such a rich, rich text to be able to interpret it in these ways, and quite honestly, we're simply scratching the surface of it. So afar vaYera, dust and ashes. Amar Rava. So we've had Rava before, and he's saying it again. Okay, he's really inspired by these. Mipnei ma amra Torah have afar lasota. Okay, so he says, on what account does the Torah say that we should bring dust? So I want to make sure. Yes, he says this actually means dust for the Sotah, for the woman suspected of adultery. So we dealt with her yesterday to some extent, and clearly Rava is saying something. It is actually in Tractate Sotah, right? The tractate that deals with this whole issue. So Rava is expounding, and this is why it's found in this particular tractate, this connection with the statement of Farva Afer and yes, and how it connection to the Sotah, who is to actually she actually has to have some ashes mixed in. I believe I'm trying to think. It's terrible that I can't always remember. At any rate, let's just take care. See, okay, yeah, it's okay. Let's just keep going. Zachta, if she was in fact innocent, right? If she's innocent, Yotze mimena ben Avraham. There's the connection with Abraham, that she will have a son, just like Abraham, Avinu, Abraham, our patriarch, de Kativ Be, so who's concerning whom it is written, Vani Vanochi Vafar Vaefer, because he said, I am dust, but dust and ashes. Lo Zachta, if she does not, in fact, merit, she is in fact guilty, Tachazor La'afara, she should return to her dust. In other words, she won't survive. So this is a connection, as you can see, a literary connection. So here we go. V'afalpi, and despite the fact, dechativ tzadikim, the kama tzadikim, despite the fact there are any number of righteous people, hayu ba'olam, that were in the world, or that Becholze, nevertheless, titbarech ba'Avraham. She nevertheless should be blessed through Abraham. Should be Abraham through whom she's blessed, and not other tzaddikim. V'yesh lomar, and we could say, hatam, that the reason for this is mishum devazeh gufa nitbarech Avraham me'akadosh baruch hu, because Abraham himself was blessed in this sort of way. In other words, the idea of being blessed with others, in the sense that Abraham was blessed, as we'll see, she yitbarchu bo, that through him should be blessed kol b'nei Adam, all human beings. So that is why, because specifically we have this verse where God in Lech Lecha in chapter 12 says to Abraham, through you, the nations of the earth will be blessed. That's why we're saying that if in fact she is a tzaddik, she's a tzaddiket, if she's a righteous human being, her child, her offspring should be like Abraham and using his names. Kamosh Katuv, as is stated, he's going to quote from that verse, v'heyeh bracha, and be a blessing, v'nivrechu v'cha. There we go, and shall be blessed through you. So that's why Rava takes on Abraham, and he's saying not just because of afar vaYera, right? And it is in fact the dust of the Mishkan that is put in the drink, in the water that the Sotah has to drink. So it is in fact afar, it is dust. as opposed to ashes. Afar vaEfer, dust and ashes. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Israel, said the Holy One, blessed be He, to the Jewish people, Choshkani bachem, I desire you. She'afilu, why? She'afilu b'sha'a she'ani mashpia lachem gdola. Because even at a time when I place greatness upon you, cause you to have greatness, atim mama'atim atzmechem lefanai, you nevertheless humble yourselves, make yourselves smaller, literally. Lema'at means to make less of yourselves before me. Natati gdola Abraham, I gave greatness to Abraham. Amar, and he said, Va'anochi afar vaEfer, and he said, I am but dust and ashes. Okay. Taking a look. Okay. V'chein Moshe, Aaron, and we see regarding Moses and Aaron, Amru v'nachnuma. They said, what are we? When they were confronted by the Israelites. The David Amar, and David said, Va'anochi tolat v'lo ish. He said, I am but a worm and not a man. V'lo komo umot haolam, and this is unlike other nations of the world. Shemikevan shenitan lahem gdola, that on account that they were given greatness, mardu b'kodesh baruch hu, they rebelled against God. Kamo Nimrod, just like Nimrod, Bedor HaHaflaga, in the generation of the dispersion. Nimrod is mentioned in the book of Genesis, and it said, Hayagi Borchayel, he was a man of valor. And the understanding of man of valor means that he confronted God. He rebelled against God. It's not, man of valor there in that context is not a compliment. So that's why he's saying what he's saying right now. And so Ufaro, and how about Pharaoh? Amar mi Hashem, when Moses and Aaron came to him with God's instruction to let the Israelites go free, his initial response was, who's God? But Nebuchadnezzar, Amar, he said, A'aleh al bamate av. He said, I will ascend to the heavens, okay, over the clouds of heaven, the thick heavens. Adme le'elyon, I can be compared to the uppermost. Okay, and that's in Isaiah 14. Vechiram, and Hiram melech Tzor, the king of Tyre, Amar, he said, Moshav Elohim yashavti, I have dwelt in the habitation of God, and that's in Ezekiel 28. Ye'ayin od, okay, and ovi'ayin od, and see further, Mashakatuf, what is written, Hashayach la'agadazo, that is pertinent to this particular legend, the Parshat Akev, in the Parsha of Akev, that's in the book of Deuteronomy. Sorry about that. Let's find the place. Okay. And the quote there is, it says, lo merubchem, that God did not select the Jewish people on account of their being so numerous, mikol hamim, of all the nations. Just make it a little bit smaller. Chashak Hashem bachem, did the Lord desire you? So I now remember yesterday I had a little bit of trouble with a translation. I think it was Naoret Charashim. That is actually, a Charash is a carpenter. So Neoret Charashim is sawdust. And in fact, I think that is in fact what they use very commonly. I remember going into a kosher butcher shop in South Africa and seeing sawdust, a lot of sawdust on the floor. And now I can see the connection here. Going on. Afar vaEfer, right? Again, a dust and ashes. Seder Taniyot. So in a case where there's no rain or there's some emergency that's happening to a community, and this is mentioned, discussed in Masechet Ta'anit. Ta'anit is a fast days, and he's saying that when they actually do declare a public fast, they actually go through various stages prior to actually declaring a full-blown fast. But here we're talking about it. He says Seder Taniot, the order of making fasts. Motziim et hateva, they take out. Teva literally means box, the ark, right? In other words, we're talking about an ark which contained the Sefer Torah, okay? The Chovah She'ir, they take it into the open place or the marketplace of the town. V'notnin efer mikle, and they put wood ashes, okay? And this is specifically this kind of ash from a tree or from vegetation, as opposed to any other kind of ash. Aleha, on the ark, right? For al Rosh Hanasi, and they place ashes on the head of the leader of the community, for al Rosh of Beitin, and also on the head of the leader of the court. V'lama efer mikle, and why Makale? I think sorry, I'm trying to remember what the exact vocalization is of this, right? Why do they take dafka, this kind of wood ashes? Kedei lahaskir zchuto shel Avraham, in order to remember the merit of Abraham, she'amar va'anochi afar va'efer, because he said, I am but dust and ashes. And this is in the Jerusalem Talmud, and they have a tractate Ta'anit as well, chapter 2, halacha aleph. Okay. Let's find the place here. Okay. So he says right here, Ve'ien bebavli Ta'anit. I believe it looks like a Tet Zion Aleph. So look at the Babylonian Talmud. This is a quote from the Jerusalem Talmud. So he says, look at the Babylonian Talmud, again, Tractate Ta'anit, and page, if I'm correct, it looks almost like Tet Zion, like page 16a. The inyan regarding this matter, mefaresh lama notnin efer mikle. They explain the reason for giving this dust, these wood ashes. Lomar, to say, hare ani anu chashavim lefanecha ka'afar. Now this is interesting, right? It says it's to communicate, to say, behold, we are before you. We are like the dust of the earth, as opposed to ashes, notice. So Afer is with an aleph, and this is with an ayin. V'tzarich lomar. So we have to say, right, disferale, that they hold la Gemara, that the Gemara considers kamanda amar, like the opinion of the one who says the afar nikra Afer, that very often dust can be referred to as Afer, as ashes as well. Sharei notnin efer, because indeed they place ashes. For omrim hare anu ka'afar. And they say, behold, we are like dust. So they're using this particular statement to show that dust and ashes are somewhat synonymous. Yen Sotah tet zayin aleph. So he says, check out Sotah, page 16a. Aval tzarich iyun. But nevertheless, it's not that simple. We need to look further into this. Shelo naktu bevavli, that they didn't take in the Babylonian Talmud, Tama HaYerushalmi, the reason given in the Yerushalmi, right? She lefanenu, that we just read. Shenotnin efer lezecher efer mamash, because there it says they place ashes as a remembrance of Efer, right? Because Abraham said, I'm but dust and ashes. Whereas here they use a different verse which says, or rather a connotation, they say, behold, we are like dust. But Abraham said dust and ashes, and we are using ashes. right? But Rashi, the Ta'anit Sham, Rashi has a interpretation of the Gemara of most of the Babylonian Talmud, pretty amazing. And he says in his commentary on Ta'anit, on this particular tractate, he says there on this page, Katav, he wrote, Denotnin Efer, that there they put ashes, Kedei Lizkor Afaro Shel Yitzchak, as a remembrance of the ashes of Isaac. Ke'ilu tzavur al gabe, as if I think this is, or it could be ke'ilu tzavur al gabe hamizbeach, but it could be ke'ilu, as if it was collected on the top of the altar. And Rashi's opinion follows the opinion of a certain person, the Yerushalmi Khan, right? The one who says this in the Jerusalem Talmud here. It's following this particular approach. Veda, and no, Rambam in Maimonides, Perek Dalet Halacha Aleph, chapter 4, Halacha 1, Mita'anit, in his Mishnah Torah, in his encyclopedic work on Jewish law, and he has it organized in this particular way in chapters and halachot, and a chapter on Ta'anit, on fast days. Ita, it says there in the Rambam, in Maimonides, Shinotnin Efer Mikle al Gabei HaTeva, that they place these wood ashes on the ark, for al Gabei Sefer Torah, and also on top of a Sefer Torah, on a Torah. The Katav HaKesef Mishneh, and one of the major commentators on Mishnah Torah, on the Maimonides, called Kesef Mishneh, he wrote, Eini Odea, I have no idea, min ayin lo l'Rabbeinu, where our master found Shinotnin Kazeh al Sefer Torah, that we actually put dust on a Sefer Torah, or rather ashes on a Sefer Torah. V'chein katav gam beBeit Yosef, and likewise a commentary by the name of Beit Yosef, the Orech Chaim, to the Shulchan Aruch, Orech Chaim, Siman Tak At, and that is a chapter, this would be five, let's see, Taf is 400, so, and Kuf is Aleph, so 579. Ulefela, but Torah Temimah says, but it's amazing, Shelo Heiru, that they didn't show, they didn't note, Lo Hu Velo Haba'im Acharav, not the Kesef Mishneh, or the people who followed him, right? Shit HaMefarshim l'Rambam, the other explanators of the Rambam, of Maimonides, v'haposkim, and the halachic arbiters, she'kedivrei harambam katfu gam harif, they didn't notice that just like the Rambam, just like Maimonides, agrees also the Rif, right? Isaac of Fez, the Harosh, Rabbeinu Asher, the Yoter Mimsim, and the Rif and the Rosh are huge authorities in the halacha on Jewish law, but these other people didn't mention them. The Yoter Mizeh, and not only that, ki b'Yalkut Yeshayahu, and the Yalkut is a collection of midrashim called Yalkut Shimoni. That's a collection of midrashim on the entire Tanakh, on the entire Bible, and in the Yalkut in Yeshayahu, that's commenting on Isaiah. I'm gonna guess it could be Samach Aleph, which could be 61. Uva Aguda. Okay, so there's a work called Aguda, and Abudraham, another commentator called Abudraham. Katuv, it's written Meforash, explicitly, the Nuschat HaGemara, using the version of the Gemara, the wording of the Gemara, B'makom shekatuv lefanenu, in the place that we made reference to. V'lama notnin al hateva, why did they place the ashes on the ark? V'lama notnin al gabei Sefer Torah. It says, and why do they place it on top of a Sefer Torah? Uvarur, and it's clear, Shekain Haya Aita Girsa the Gemara, that was the version of the text in the Gemara Lifnehem that was before them. In other words, that was before the Agudah and the Abu Draham. Okay. Velifnei Harambam, and also, of course, Maimonides. In other words, we're talking now about the fact that we have a corrupt text, and our text maybe leaves it out, but in the text that these people saw, these scholars saw, it was there. It said, you put ashes on a Sefer Torah. Uma shekatav shinotnin gam al hateva, and the fact that they wrote that they place it also on the ark, yesh lomar, that one can say shetafas girsat mishnah, so that he's using the language in that case of the Mishnah al hateva, the way it says on the ark, the girsat Gemara, and as the version of the Gemara al Sefer Torah, on a scroll of Torah. Shnehem Yachad, the two of them all together. In other words, both the Ark and the Sefer Torah. The Emtat Girsa Zo, and the truth, the legitimacy of this particular version, Al Gabe Sefer Torah, where it says on top of a Sefer Torah, Muchrachat, it's compelling. Mihatam, from the reason Sha'amru al Zeh b'Gemara, that they mentioned regarding this in the Gemara, Imo Anochi b'Tzara. They use a verse that says, I am with him. This is God speaking of himself. I am with him in trouble, in times of trouble. And so the Sefer Torah, in a very serious sense, represents the divine presence. And so placing ashes as a sign of sadness and mourning and contrition, etc., is also put on the Sefer Torah, because it says, I am with you in your trouble. But nevertheless, kasher girsazo, right, there are other difficulties with this particular version. Ma shesha'alu, and the fact that they ask in this particular version, lama notnin al gabei Sefer Torah. They ask the question, why do you put it on a Sefer Torah if it's already been answered? Acharei shebemishnah lo nizkar klal, and especially if they didn't have the version that one puts ashes on a Sefer Torah, why do they even ask the question, right? So it doesn't say lo nizkar klal v'chol hagirsot shinotnin al gabei Sefer Torah. In other words, it would appear that they didn't have a version that said that they put it on a Sefer Torah. So why are they asking, why do you put it on a Sefer Torah? And it doesn't make any sense to ask for the reason regarding something where it isn't even mentioned to begin with. Omnam, however, yesh lomar, one can say, kihine, that in this particular case, kamochen, in similar situations, sha'alu lama mitkasim besakin, they also ask the question, why do you don sackcloth? Why do people cover themselves in sackcloth? For lama yosin levet hakvarot, and why did they go out to the cemetery? Mishnah, and yet in the Mishnah, lo nizku klal inanim ela. These particular details of a fast day, they're not mentioned either. But katav haran, and the Ran wrote, afal pi shelo matzinu, even though we don't find this written, lo b'mishnah, not in the Mishnah, lo baraita, and not in baraitot, shehitkinu la'asot kach, that they established to do this, to practice this. Ella mipnei shene nahagu la'asot kain. But what happened was they saw that people had this custom of doing these particular things, right? And for this reason, shalu tam al minhagam. They asked a reason for this minhag, for this practice. Adkan l'shono, and this is, remember, the Ran is the one who's talking about this, if I'm not mistaken, and that's the end of quote. And indeed, it's a very good. He makes a very good point. I think. Oh, semech. I don't know. Again, there are times when my vocalization is I'm challenged, right? I think I'm going to say v'samach ne'eman lahagirsa, that it's a reliable support for this particular version. Shenotnin vafer al gabay Sefer Torah, that they place ashes on a Sefer Torah. Ita betargum sheni le'ester. We can actually find pretty much compelling proof in the Aramaic translation of the book of Esther called the Targum Sheni, which means second translation. So there's more than one translation into Aramaic of the book of Esther. And what distinguishes this second quote translation is Asher Kenoda, which if you look at it, called Varav Lekuchim Midrashot Vagadot Atikot, that in the process of translating the book of Esther, he introduces many midrashim and legends that are very ancient. So the Targum of the book of the second Targum of the book of Esther is a very strong source. Okay, let's see. The Perek Dalet in chapter 4, pasuk in the verse that says Mordechai Yada, and Mordechai knew Bezelo Shono, and this is what he has to say, the Targum Shenu. Ve'afiku alui sifra deoraita, they took out a book of the Bible, kad michrach besata, when they dawned on, they wrapped themselves in sackcloth, or mefalpel bekitma, and they rolled themselves in ashes. And he translates that megolel be'afar, Yuyan Sham. Check it out there. And that's it for today as far as our texts are concerned. So I'm going to stop the share. Okay. I know I don't know if you hear a lot of noise around me, but there is. So hopefully you can, okay, good. Thanks, Ernie. If you can speak up, if you have a question or a comment, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Okay. No questions, they'll come. Morris, you're off mute, so tell me.
Oh, no, I have no questions. I have to get going though.
Okay.
I'll see you on Sunday.
All right. Very good. Well, God willing, we'll meet tomorrow. Okay, everyone.
Okay.
I thought what we had today was actually interesting and in some ways very sweet. Okay. Take
All
care.
right.
Be well.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.